Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for part 5 of the Driving Growth Through Meaningful Customer Engagement webinar series. And today we're going to be focusing on optimization. I'm your moderator, Zoe Fernandez from Merkle's marketing team. And before I introduce our speakers and we get to the webinar content, I'd like to share some key housekeeping items for you to keep in mind throughout today's webinar. The webinar console you are looking at can be completely customized. You can resize or move any of the windows you have open. Please ask questions throughout the webinar as we'd love to hear from you. To ask a question, please submit them by clicking on the Q&A icon on your screen, entering your question, and hitting send. If we don't get to your question today, we will email you a response in the coming days. And if you'd like to revisit today's webinar, a recorded version will be sent to you. And lastly, resources related to this webinar can be found at the bottom of your screen. Please take a look to learn more. For today's webinar, we are joined by 3 of Merkle's industry thought leaders: Aaron Tellier, EVP and GM of our Insurance and Wealth Management vertical; Jen DiGiovanni, Senior Director of Client Strategy; and Kartik Podival, AVP of Analytics at UGAM, a Merkle company. And now I'm going to hand it over to Aaron to get us started.
Thanks very much, Zoe. So let me first say welcome to everyone who taking the time out today to attend the webinar. If this is your first time, that's an extra special welcome. And if you have joined us for our previous sessions, I appreciate that, and thanks for coming back for our wrap up. I think you're going to appreciate the content that we have today. So I expect that most of you will know who Merkle is, but if not, I just want to share that Merkle's vision. We've been around for 30 years plus, and we are a customer experience transformation partner to the Fortune 1000. And we're really proud of all the work that we've done with so many great brands over those years. And we think we provide those brands with a true competitive advantage. And that competitive advantage lies in capabilities that we partner with them on from a data, technology, experiential, organizational perspective in order to help them deliver optimal customer experiences. And we're still on that journey. We continue to add more and more capability to serve you, to provide an even broader set of needs that you have. So if you've been here before, you also know that we've talked about the disruption that's occurring in the marketplace, and it's not slowing down, and we're in a very, very dynamic environment, which is all the more reason that today's topic on optimization, which we'll cover quite a bit in depth on analytics, it's important to have your pulse on the finger of what's happening with your customers. And the stakes are really high. 1 in 3 customers who have a bad experience with a brand will leave a brand. And the pressure from the marketplace is continuing to get more intense all the time from our established players and new entrenched players. And if you look around the globe, and even here in the US, you've got an increasing number of fintech competitors. But it's not just limited to either traditional competitors or fintech competitors, but you've got big technology as well. You've got Google and Apple and many other large established technology players saying, let me get in on the financial services business. There's a big profit pool here. And with the relationships that they have with their customers, they think that they can have an advantage. So there's certainly plenty happening in the marketplace, all the more reason to really get closer to your customers, and that happens through that understanding. So one of the things that we really try to do is design those experiences that address the customer's goals. And we think about customers' goals in really 2 ways. They come to us very often as financial services providers with financial goals that they are looking for to achieve. But at the same time, they also have experiential goals that they want. They have a need for, convenience or status or, more fundamentally, things like shelter, their home mortgages and sustenance, or, other things that are more foundational, education, need saving for college, that sort of thing. So we as as marketers and as really experienced providers, need to balance these two and design the kind of experiences that are going to break through in the marketplace and make sure that our customers are happy and that we serve them and retain them. So, as I said, it's all about those trade-offs and understanding the impact that we can make on their decisions, and that's done through great insight into clients. All the what we're going to talk about today: zero-party data, first-party data, second and third-party data. So there's tons of ways that we can get at customers' decision-making processes, and Kartik is going to spend some time going through that. But before we do, just want to kind of reorient everybody to where we are in this, again, last part of our series. So, we've talked about the planning aspect of it. How do we think through designing customer experiences? Who is it that we're targeting? What is that audience? How do we reach them? What can we learn about them? How do we orchestrate all those interactions, because it is a multi-channel world?
So as Aaron was mentioning, we are in our last sort of webinar across the series. We did go through planning an audience. We went through orchestration and how we actually build the organization and technology to enable a CXM organization. And then ultimately, how does that influence your business strategy? So today, we're going to focus in on optimization and ensuring you have the right data to enable those audiences and that planning for the right experience. We believe here at Merkle that CXM really requires a brand to listen to their customers. That listening enables us to empathize with them and understand the critical moments within their journey that are important for your business to deliver the right experience, right? And those moments that should be prioritized for your marketing strategy. Now, in a prior session, our planning session, we talked about the 3 pillars of planning for CXM. First, we start with empathizing, and this is really where we understand those critical moments, those friction points that really matter within the consumer journey. We then take those critical moments and connect them to your business to ensure that we can understand where those moments that matter are, that your business can fulfill, your brand can fulfill for them. And then we deliver those experiences and the best experiences to those individuals within the right moments in the journey that matter to that individual and ladder back to your brand. So today, we're really going to focus on that first pillar, that first step of empathize, understanding those critical moments, understanding those friction moments so that you can optimize towards the right customer experience throughout your campaigns, throughout your marketing strategy. Now, to empathize with the individuals, you really need to start with the current state. What are the current moments that matter to the individual? What are they doing? What are they thinking? What are they feeling, right? What are the key actions that they're taking across the journey? What are the key factors in their decision process across those key moments? What are the questions that they're asking in those key moments? And then ultimately, within their overall experience, what is their emotional state? What are they feeling right now? What are the things that we need to take into consideration when we create our creative and our messaging for those individuals to make sure that the business is laddered back to a value exchange or a value proposition to that individual that really matters to them from an emotional state perspective, okay? Ultimately, once you have these 3 data points, then you can create your current state experience map. And this is really your North Star that kicks off your planning process. You use those data points to determine the moments that matter, the moments where individuals are coming through the journey today, and they're starting the journey, they're coming back to the journey, or when they're leaving the journey, when they're done with the journey, when they decide to stop the journey, or when they decide to halt and come back later. What are those moments, those friction points and those opportunity moments that really matter for that individual, that helps you get a holistic view and an empathy towards their decision process so you can determine where your business fits within that journey and where you can excel. When we think about the data that's required to create that experience map and deliver to an empathy and an understanding of the customers, we really need to think about a multitude of data components. So first, program performance and understanding those key moments, following through the journey and understanding the different key triggers for those individuals, then thinking and understanding what are those key factors, what are the key questions that those individuals are asking within your site search, within SEO and paid search. Program performance can give you all that knowledge. Audience profile, which we talked a lot about within our audience session within this webinar series, is all about understanding the key factors to their decision process and understanding their emotional state within that decision process. Industry analysis is also a critical data component in understanding what are your competitors doing? How are they answering those key questions that individuals are asking within their journey? And are they delivering to that question? Are they answering that question well? Or are they leaving something to be desired where you can come in as a white space and provide a better opportunity? Also, how are they messaging in the market? How are they aligning to the emotional state of the individuals? And what is that white space for your business to be able to stand out amongst the crowd, right? What is that way for you to connect in a different way than your competitors? So all these data points are very critical when you think about that experience map and really having empathy for your customer. But there's one data component that we find is deprioritized within marketing organizations today. And that is your value, it works here. Yeah, voice of customer. So your voice of customer is really about asking questions back to the consumer to understand the key moments that matter, their decisioning process, and their emotional state. It seems obvious that a marketing organization that wants to be customer-centric would actually talk to their customers and ask them questions. But we find that because this one is so challenging for organizations to connect back to and build an infrastructure for within their organizations, that it tends to be deprioritized. If it is used within organizations, we find it usually focused on like branding campaigns where you're trying to determine creative messaging, or within product differentiation or product decisioning in your product teams. What features am I going to have within my roadmap? What new products might I offer? And asking customers feedback on that. But voice of customer has a really critical place in your marketing planning process because it allows you to not only truly ask and understand what those key critical moments are and the mindset of the individual, but also validate that the marketing you're putting into the market actually works for the customer and is actually what they desire, right? And so all of this information is really critical for brands to work towards and ingest into their marketing team and ensure that their marketing team is looking at on a regular basis so that they can optimize that experience map and their experience plans based on what the customer is actually telling them. So Kartik is going to walk us through today, voice of customer, this area that we believe is sort of the new opportunity within organizations to really focus in and become a true CXM business, and walk us through what that looks like, how you can do that, and what that means for the customer. Okay.
Thank you, Jen. Good morning, everyone. As the financial services industry accelerates the shift towards a omnichannel strategy, the number of interactions and thereby the experiences that a customer is going to have with your brand is going to exponentially increase. Hence, only if you are able to measure and understand those specific experiences can we translate that to a competitive advantage, which in turn will drive better business outcomes. Now, let me put that into perspective with an example where you see on screen, which it talks about the initial stages of a customer's life cycle. The example here is where a customer is looking for a loan product. Now, if I were to put myself in the shoes of the customer, I would first be exposed to advertising. Once that piques my interest, I then pick up the phone and talk to a customer care officer at the bank. Once I get all the information, I then proceed to the branch and start processing the loan application. Once the loan has been sanctioned, I would then have a checking account, I would have a debit card, and using the card, I would walk up to an ATM and withdraw cash. And finally, my relationship manager would actually do a financial review for me and then maybe cross-sell or maybe upsell a credit card. So as you see, as the bank deepens the relationship with the customer and drives loyalty, the customer is exposed to various different channels and touch points. But what we need to keep in mind is that at every stage, there are those moments that matter, which is key to the customer progressing towards loyalty. Unfortunately, with so many different touch points, how do you understand which are those moments that matter? The answer to that lies in the treasure trove of information, which is voice of customer data. Now, voice of customer data can be in structured as well as unstructured format. Now, structured format data can come from surveys, where you have NPS and CS scores, from social media, Facebook thumbs up, or even product ratings, right? The unstructured data, which is more in the form of free text, this really comes from survey verbatims. It comes from call logs, transcripts, or even chatbots. Now, structured VOC data plus unstructured VOC data captures the, you could call it the need of a customer, but that alone will not suffice. This articulated need needs to be overlaid with unarticulated need, which comes from behavioral data. An example of behavioral data, if I were to go back to the previous example, where a customer is applying for a loan product, and he's going through that application process, and you see a lot of dropouts. Now that's one sort of a behavior, but why are those dropouts happening? Only if you marry this information with unstructured VOC data or structured VOC data, you could get to the why. So paucity in data or information is not really the problem. Here, as Forrester recently called out, 71% of firms don't fully aggregate and mine feedback across surveys and other sources. 61% don't close the loop with customers who gave feedback. And 79% don't quantify the business impact of issues. So the bottom line here is VOC data is really not translating to business outcomes. Thankfully, many organizations acknowledge this challenge, and they're moving towards building out a VOC hub. Now, what does a VOC hub entail? First step is to collect the right data, make sure the data is in the right format. Post that, you need to consolidate all of this data to create a single view of the customer. Then analytics can synthesize or distill this data into building blocks of information, which can then be pieced together to form customer stories and actionable insights. Finally, all of this needs to be actioned upon. That's why setting up a cross-functional customer feedback council is absolutely critical. This feedback council can coordinate and drive action. So how do we synthesize and analyze? The foremost and important aspect over there is to build out a robust CX measurement framework. At the core of it is measuring experiences, because experiences shape attitudes and attitudes drive behaviors. Now, most organizations have metrics that measure behaviors, but it's equally important to measure attitudes and experiences. So let's try and understand, how do we measure behaviors? The important aspect over here is to identify the right metric to do that. Now, these metrics can differ by the experiences that you're trying to measure. It needs to take into consideration the industry trends and standards. It needs to be using the right methodology. For example, if the business strategy is to focus on younger audience, or maybe the Gen Z population, right? There are research studies done by Forrester that says that the Gen Z population gives feedback only if they are incentivized, only if they have a connect with the brand. They will give feedback only if there are extreme feedbacks, either positive or negative. So these are aspects that you need to take into consideration when building out the methodology to track feedback from such a customer audience. And finally, the metric needs to be absolutely aligned with the business outcome that you're trying to drive. Now, across industries like insurance, wealth management, banking, there are a host of different metrics that can be leveraged. The most famous or widely used one is Net Promoter Score. What it essentially does is that ask the customer how likely he or she is to recommend a brand based on the experiences that they've had with products and services. The other metric that's widely used is CSAT. Now, this focuses mainly on one-time interactions and is widely used in customer support. But over the past few years, organizations are moving towards using customer effort score. It's essentially a transactional metric that asks the customer how easy or difficult was it using a particular feature of a product. So for example, if a financial institution comes up with a new feature in the mobile app and the customer is navigating through the mobile app, and when the customer clicks or uses a particular feature that was recently implemented, he or she will get prompted to rate that particular feature. So these ratings are in the moment and are more closer to the experience that a customer is having. So NPS, along with CSAT and CES, are really leading indicators of customer loyalty. And loyalty in turn drives revenue. So if you do not have loyalty of the customer, he or she is likely to churn. And that's captured through churn rate as a metric. And if the customer is not loyal, that's not going to translate to revenue. And that's captured through customer lifetime value. Now, churn rate and CLV are really hard metrics. So let's take an example of how NPS is implemented. Now, this is an example where the bank wanted to understand customer service across various regional offices. Now, as you can see, when you implement an NPS for this scenario, it comes with a visualization, a comprehensive dashboard that gives you insights like which is the regional office to kind of focus on and which segment has an issue. It also enables you to deep dive into specific aspects of customer service, and it quantifies it as well. So what that enables you is to focus on key areas to improve on. In this case, easy to contact, and in general, the helpfulness of staff. But then it begs the question, is customer service the only aspect or factor that drives NPS or influences NPS? The answer to that is no. There are various other experiences that really shapes customers' attitude, and the attitude in turn drives NPS. So as you can see, customer service on the left-hand side is just one aspect. You've got brand reputation, policies, speed and ease, cost of pricing. These are all different experiences that the customer would be having. So how do you collect this information? You basically just ask the question to the customer through surveys. Now these survey studies can be through brand tracking, satisfaction tracking. There are various other studies that can be done. Now all of these studies can collect information, and that information is called zero-party data because you're getting it directly from the customer. Now these studies through surveys do take time. The turnaround time for all of this is not quick. That's where, to retain the freshness of the information that you gather through voice of customer data, you can look at unstructured data, and more specifically, text data. Now the example on screen is a typical conversation that customers have through the chatbot. Now all of this generates textual information. Now parsing and going through all of this information takes time manually. That's where there are automated methodologies that can be leveraged and implemented to analyze this information. The choice of those methodologies is really a trade-off between accuracy that you're trying to drive, as well as the effort and time that goes into implementing and creating these methodologies. Now there are various different methodologies out there that varies in complexity. But, we don't have to kind of get into each of the methodologies right now. You have LSA, LDA, NMF, these are all examples. But what I would like to call out is what these methodologies do. These methodologies translate or distill this data, the textual data, into topics or themes around which the customer is talking or giving you feedback on. Now let's look at an example. On screen you have various different topics that we've gathered from text data, which is product and services, product website, platform system, or maybe about the customer account. And in these topics, it also gives you a drill down on subtopics, specifically which are the products that the customer is talking about. In this case, most of the issues or concerns that the customer has is with debit or credit card, followed by mobile app. So with this information, what do we really do? Is this really actionable? It's not yet actionable. That's where we may want to dial up the sophistication in the analytics that needs to be leveraged. So here's another example where we used a more sophisticated algorithm or methodology to create topics or themes around what the customer is talking about. As you can see, payments and transactions. I need to speak to someone. I have a problem with my account. I need the relevant solution, or I appreciate the service, or even positive feedback. So these are all different topics that the customer is actually giving us feedback on. Now, if you drill deeper into payments and transactions, the customer is talking about refund issues, or maybe he or she is not able to transfer money. Those are some of the top two things that customer is talking about. So what do we do with this information? So let me give a moment for the slide to load. All right. So with in the previous slide we had two topics. We had two subtopics, which was refund as well as send and transfer money. Now, what can we do with this information? This information can be flagged for transaction fraud, and the fraud team can take it away and investigate that further. This information can tell us that there's some issue with a particular feature of a product, and maybe the product team needs to look into it. Or this information can even be an input to a MarTech platform, which can further be used for retention strategies. Or for all you know, this is a case of the customer not knowing how to use a particular feature in a product, and hence he or she needs to be educated about that particular product. And maybe the marketing team then needs to launch an information campaign to address that concern. So as you see, these nuggets of information can be leveraged by various different business functions and take action. But what's critical is not to see this collection of VOC information and tracking VOC data as a one-time effort. It's important to continuously listen to the customer. And that's where building out a VOC hub gives you that platform to bring various different decisioning across business functions together and thereby drive business outcomes across customer acquisition, portfolio growth, or retention, or any other strategy. So what does it take to build out a VOC hub? It takes people, it takes process and technology. So in people, you would need a multidisciplinary set of skills to build out robust processes, and all the while enabled by technology. So now we at Merkle and Ugam bring that right blend of people, process, and technology partnership to build out a VOC hub. And we're really proud to say that we've done this end-to-end in building out a VOC program across various different marquee clients, and especially in the financial services world.
That came up during the presentation, and I'd like to ask our experts to go over them. So the first question is, it's about experience maps. So Jen, I think they're referring to, in our previous session, we spent some time talking about how to create experience maps. And the question is, to what role do these analytics play in the creation of experience maps? And does one have to come before the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually get that question all the time. Really, what's important about moving towards a CXM model is to start with what you have. So whether you have just program performance or half of your program performance that's maybe not connected across channel, and maybe a little bit of audience profiling, whatever that looks like, starting from the data that you have today is a good first step in actually starting to create that rigor within your organization to think about the customer first. Even just understanding and uncovering from a customer lens questions like, am I bombarding them with too much information that's irrelevant to them? Does my performance data show me that maybe some of this information is irrelevant and I need to cull this information down? Is a really great first step. And being able to create the business casing required to get all of the other data components together. So voice of customer, while one of the most critical data components that a brand can leverage for a CXM model, is something that may require business casing for a lot of the brands here on this call today. So starting with what you have, creating that business case, showing the value of using customer first data to make informed decisions based on what the customer needs really helps you scale that program out over time and include more components of friction moments and opportunity moments within your experience map over the course of that plan. So make sure you start with what you have and then build a plan to get what you need in the future.
Terrific, Jen. Appreciate that answer. And then the second question, I'm pretty sure this one's for Kartik. Kartik, the question is, we use Qualtrics to capture customer feedback. Do you have examples of how that can be incorporated into the analytics that you described today?
Absolutely, Aaron. So we use Qualtrics, to implement what you call as listening posts across the customer journey, and we collect information at various stages, and that information is also integrated with CRM systems, and hence you can really track, customers more holistically. We overlay, like I said, behavioral data, as well as unstructured data from text for various different clients. Recently we implemented the VOC program for a bank, whereby we condensed almost 40 to 50 surveys into 9 or 10, key surveys. And that information was much more valuable and customers were able to respond. We saw a higher response rate through that. And that translated to rich information that we were gathering. And using that customer base, we overlaid that with some of the lookalike segments of customers. And we understood maybe other customers may also be facing similar issues. So it turned out to be quite actionable by leveraging Qualtrics, especially for a financial institution.
Terrific. I know a lot of organizations use multiple different ways to collect this data. Qualtrics is a common partner, so appreciate you giving us a little bit of an example there. So thanks for sticking with us through the presentation today. I hope you learned something. I know Jen and Kartik would love to talk to you about the specific examples that you have to tackle the challenges for your specific organization. Again, I want to thank you if this was your first webinar or if you saw the whole series. They're all available on demand, so you can go back and check them out. But better yet, as I said, give us a shout, and we'll be happy to connect the experts with you in a live session. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Take care.